Good evening, everyone. Thank you for tuning into my live broadcast. I'm Heather Carlisle, and tonight our topic is habits and self defeating behaviors. And pretty much most of us have something that has appeared in our life that's a self defeating behavior. Sometimes it's just a habit or a bad habit, and some of our habits are really good habits. So tonight I want to talk about that whole world because next week we're going to talk about how we self-sabotage using those habits and those self-defeating behaviors. And then we'll talk about also, while we do that, what to do about it. So anytime you want to chime in, I am delighted to hear from you and to have a give and take, a conversation. Whether or not it's on our topic tonight, I'm always happy that someone's here participating with me and we are live. So, when I consider mentoring people about their habits, and usually bad habits or habits that they want to change, and their self-defeating behaviors, I want to make sense of it. I want to make sense of it in a way where you can make sense of it and say, usually my goal is for somebody to say, oh, well, that makes sense. What do I do about it? That's the golden moment for me. Because there are many things that we know to do about it, and they're always healthy things. But it helps if we know in the beginning all about the habit or the self-defeating behavior, which means we want to make friends with it. We want to get to know it. We want to know what it says. We want to know why it says it and what's underneath it, because those things are important to you. They made you, they molded you, they gave you style, they give you the things that you really care about, and therefore mirror to you and to the rest of the world the things that are strong and good and true inside of you. So they're connected. Sometimes it's not a direct connection, and that's why somebody like me is very often pretty handy, because I've got is in my profession a way of seeing things and putting the puzzle pieces together, which is one of the things I just love to do. So chime in anytime, type me a question, type me a comment, and I'll be delighted to hear from you. Okay, habits and self-defeating behaviors. Now, when we think of those bad habits, the typical thing that we think of is not that we forget to brush our teeth, because everybody does that, and it doesn't harm anything if you only do it now and then. But we usually end up going way out on the continuum to bad habits that are a detriment to us, and usually they become an addiction or a compulsion or an obsession. And so notice I'm again using a continuum, because we human beings are extremely complex, and it's not just this and this or black and white. It's this and then this and then this, and we're going in a direction, right? So in the beginning, when we develop a habit, there's a reason for it. And there can be a system of reasons, of course. And it usually has something to do with a very kind of pure thing, which is we do things to comfort ourselves, to soften the sadness, to make up for being bored, to avoid our anxiety, to some way or another escape the feelings of low self-esteem or self-doubt, or of feeling like nobody wants us and we don't belong. Usually it's one of those classic things that speak of a healthy human response, because it's healthy to want to belong somewhere. It's healthy to want to feel loved and connected. It's healthy to want to feel good about yourself and have good self-esteem and good self-confidence. It's healthy to feel like we're capable of things. It's healthy to want to do the right thing and to feel bad when we do the wrong thing. So we want to remind ourselves that whatever these habits or self-defeating behaviors are, they're usually built on something that's right, good, and true, and comes from a pure heart. And thus, what I typed for you today is, what is your relationship with yourself and with your world? If we've been coping with inadequate habits or patterns, or an inadequate lifestyle, or inadequate relationships, friendships, whatever it is, we will usually find something that makes us feel better, or better for the moment, or somewhat better. And those habits can therefore become, sometimes it's the only habit you have. Sometimes it starts very young, and then it may be the only thing a little kid can figure out. And then you start using it more and more because it's your favorite and because it's worked for you before, and you haven't thought about what other things might work, and maybe other things don't work because this is the one that feels most effective to you. And so as it goes more and more and more, then it becomes a bad habit. Then it becomes something that you crave. Then it becomes something that you have to have. Then it becomes an addiction. Then it becomes a compulsion. Then it becomes an obsession. And if we build our lives completely around that one thing, and it's an unhealthy thing, it can, in the end, and you know people with addiction problems, famous people in the news, they end up actually dying because they don't know how to create this relationship with themselves and a relationship with their world that's healthy and happy. So habits always come back to something in the beginning, and something in the beginning that's important. So then what we want to do is like, well, what's important? And what's important to you? And what's important to a lifestyle that's healthy and happy? Because of course, if we want to define those habits, those bad habits, and those self-defeating behaviors, we obviously then want to know, well, what do I do instead? And so often we get the stories of the people who are really lost and don't come out of it. And sometimes we get stories of people who, quote unquote, go into treatment and it doesn't work or whatever. Seldom do we get the blow-by-blow description of someone who improves their lifestyle and their relationship with themselves, because it's a quiet thing. It's an internal thing. It's about listening to what's true for you and what really works for you. And, you know, the popular information that we usually find has to do with solving a problem and focusing on the problem. I want to focus on the goodness underneath, and understanding with kindness, and then going forward. And so we have a comment. Someone says, yes, exactly. What do we do about these self-defeating behaviors? What works best in your view? Thank you so much for chiming in and for asking me that question. And that's a question that I like to answer honestly and truthfully. And as you know, if it were simple, if we could bottle it and sell it, that would be really nice. And it hasn't been done yet, has it? And that's because it's complex. And it starts with you really knowing yourself. It starts with you knowing what makes you healthy, happy, successful. So I want to read you this. I love this man's work. His name is Stanton Peele. And let me type that for you. There are many people, of course, who write on the topic of our compulsions, our habits, our addictions, our self-defeating behaviors. This guy talks right straight arrow, right to it. And there are other people who do that, of course. But he was the first one to for me to find, and I just really appreciate his thoughts. His name is Stanton Peele. And so I wanted to read you his definition of addiction. This is not all the definitions, of course, but this is one that leads into the way I want to speak to the topic this evening. He says, addiction is a pattern of behavior and experience, which is best understood by examining an individual's relationship with his or her world. A relationship, me in my world. And also, he says, it occurs for people who learn drug use or other destructive patterns as a way of gaining satisfaction in the absence of more functional ways of dealing with the world. Therefore, maturity, and he's saying that this is the direction that we want to go in, of course. He says maturity, improved coping skills, and better self-management and self-regard all contribute to overcoming and preventing addiction. And another little piece that he says is, addiction is a way of coping with life, of artificially attaining feelings and rewards people feel they cannot achieve in any other way. So I like what he says there. It leads into how I see bad habits. That when we start using a bad habit, it's a genuine reaching out that we have often when we're young to solve some discomfort, some problem, some need, some way of us trying to keep true to the things that we really want, the things that we really value. And so then, of course, this leads into values work and beliefs work. So it can be extremely complex because our, whatever it is we value, we do that in our own style. And then whatever it is that we believe on top of that is also built on top by our culture, our gender, the time that we grew up in, the surroundings we have, how limited or how expanded our choices are, and of course our adult role models and mentors. So I'll work with something, but I'd love to work with something from you, my listeners, so that it's specifically related, me mentoring you right now with something that concerns you. It's, I can take any example, but it's really fun when I've got somebody live to work with and we can have this give and take. So chime in if you have a concern about you or a loved one with self-destructive behavior or self-defeating or bad habit. Because what we want to do is make friends with it, with the part of you that has that way of, it may be, as Stanton Peele said, coping. It may also be comforting. It may also be avoidance. And coping, there are lots of different ways of thinking about coping. So anybody who's tuned in, if you've got an example, maybe yours, maybe somebody else's, give me something to work with. Some self-defeating behavior that is tough to change or direct in a new way. Okay, we've got someone says, I really don't want to make friends with my addictions. Is this necessary? It's not making friends with your addictions. And thank you for putting it that way. It's making friends with the sweet part of ourselves underneath. The sweet part of ourselves that needed something, that looked for something, because that part is the part that chose that and didn't have any other way of knowing something else to choose. So let me give you an example. I worked recently with a young woman who was raised in a very, very unhealthy family. And what she learned to do, because the adults were out of control or not present or in certain ways violating, what she learned to do, what her best bet was to just get really quiet. So there are three typical things that little kids do. And this usually starts when we're little kids. It's, and you've heard this before, fight, flight, freeze. So this particular little girl, she couldn't run away from home. She couldn't fight because the grown-ups are way too big and way too violent. So she froze and got real quiet. Some kids hide, or hide somewhere in, in a tree or under the house or in a closet somewhere, just to wait until the storm goes by. So I've had several examples of how little kids handle this. And it's usually this, because you're vulnerable then. That's when you don't know what to choose to help yourself, to comfort yourself, to keep from being lost in terror or pain or shame, whatever it was. So a little kid will find something. I don't know if you've ever heard of trichotillomania. That's a long, technical, psychological term. And it's a term of little kids who pull out their hair or eyelashes or eyebrows. And it's always such a tender thing for me to help people with. And I have colleagues who deal specifically with that. It's an anxiety disorder, and it's a scared little kid, a really scared little kid that's frozen. And they have to stay frozen until the abuse or the ugliness is past. And they'll pull out hairs just one at a time from their head, because it keeps them occupied. Or pull out hairs one at a time from their eyebrows or their eyelashes. And it's a way of them stimulating their own system and occupying themselves until the scary stuff finishes. And so, of course, one of my clients many years ago was a woman who still pulled out her eyelashes when she was stressed. And it was, from when she was a little girl. And that was a habit that she developed. It worked for her. Didn't work very well, but she didn't know how to change herself and her lifestyle to find another way of living without that much anxiety. Let's see, we've got a comment. I know I should stop associating with my friends who smoke, but I don't think it's right for me to reject them, even though being around them makes it very difficult for me to stay off the cigs. What would you say about my dilemma? That's a good example. It's a very good example. Because it's, you've got three different systems that are in place with this particular bad habit or self-defeating behavior. So notice the first thing this person said, my friends. Associating with my friends. Which is, the people in your heart. And if your friends smoke and you're in a place where you haven't pulled out of it for other things, then you're just rubbing your own nose in it, and then it's bad. It feels bad to be around people and then feel like you're deprived, or to have the craving. And then when you have a craving, you're hungry for something, right? So we've got the friends, we've got the craving of a habit that worked for you, and there's another element, dear. The third element is personal time. Because, we usually don't smoke on professional time. Some people are sitting at their computer smoking while they're doing their work. But usually people don't smoke until they take a break, or until it's happy hour or something. And or they're having coffee for breakfast and they want a cigarette with their coffee. So Cigarettes are one of the bad habits, one of the self-defeating behaviors that are pretty pervasive. It can, that craving for a cigarette or the craving for something can appear in all different kinds of ways attached to many different things that are healthy and good in your life, right? So attached to your friendships, your relationships, your heart connections, which are, some of the most wonderful things in the whole world, is your friends. And of course, it's very hard if it's your spouse or your beloved who smokes. And then, of course, you're smoking because it works for you. And that means that in order for you to find something else that works for you, it's going to take a while, because a habit is an old programming, an old rhythm, an old lifestyle, and especially in smoking, there's a whole ritual of the senses, the basic human sensory system that bypasses immediately, intellectually that this is not a good thing. Emotionally, you may feel guilty about it, but you go right down into the gut instinct, the survival and the basic reptile brain, the old brain, which is the more primitive system, more foundational survival system. And if you've got smoking attached with your senses, which is not your thinking, not your emotions in your heart, but your sensory, more primitive system, then that's a whole other deal, isn't it? Because it's a ritual, it's a sensory satisfaction, taste, touch, movement, lighting it, the hand to mouth, the oral gratification. It's all of the senses, right? So then how do you replace that with something that uses all of those senses? And that's one of the reasons that makes it so hard to stop smoking, is you want to somehow or another replace that ritual and that sensory craving with something different, or with the ability to at last move through time to where all of those movement patterns are no longer kind of awake and craving. So that means, and this is difficult, you may need to change many things about your life, your lifestyle, your relationships. And maybe just subtle things, maybe very dramatic things, maybe things over time. So, bottom line, you and I know that smoking is very unhealthy. It causes death, which is the most unhealthy thing we can do. It also impacts the people around us. So then, we end up excluding ourselves, going outside the house, outside the office, outside the car, taking ourselves out of life, somewhere to use a cigarette. And then, of course, there will be people who want to join you if they all also smoke. But then there will be people who are healthier than that, and they won't smoke. They refuse to smoke, and they never have. They never got that comforting or it's very complex to say comforting behavior. It's much more than that. It can be much more than that, can't it? Sometimes smoking cigarettes is just that urge that we have when we're a teenager to somehow find a tribe, to fit in somewhere, or to feel a sense of our identity. And sometimes it's against people that I do this and you don't. So oftentimes in adolescence, it's attached to all of those things that we need to grow when we're finding identity. And then if it attaches while we're finding identity, it becomes a sense of our own identity. So, do you see, in answering this dilemma and answering this question, this is extremely difficult. Now, I'm wondering, you probably have friends, other friends who smoke and other friends who don't smoke. And there are probably activities that the smoking friends do and activities that the non-smoking friends do. So I'm wondering, usually very healthy people don't smoke. And that means maybe it's time to consider finding more friends and new friends who are healthier, who don't smoke, so that you are in an environment, in a milieu, in a tribe, in an association, in a volunteer position, somewhere where you're doing something that you just love and the people there don't smoke. So that relating to those people and interacting with them and having a lot of fun with them is not about smoking. So that's one of the difficult things about the first aspect of your smoking that you mentioned is your friends. So when certain lifestyle involves friendships, then it's for me to say, and it's not for me to say this unless I'm a professional, and it's not for anybody else to say to you, but as a professional, I remind you that smoking is not healthy, and the people who are smoking haven't yet found a way to live a healthy lifestyle. And so, as often happens through the lifespan, hopefully we're healthy enough that we're interested in growing, changing, evolving, moving forward, learning more things, mastering more things, finding more meaning, creating more meaning, giving more meaning. And that usually means change of our home, change of our social circle, change of our employment, change of our friends, change of our hobbies and activities. Hopefully, otherwise we get bored, we get stagnant, we get frustrated, we get stressed. So the real answer to this dilemma is a healthy lifestyle. And one of the things that I'm very, very sensitive to, very aware of, is that very few of us know adults who are living a healthy, happy lifestyle, and that mentor us and show us what a dimensioned and fun life looks like. Some people get there pretty well in retirement. So I set out to define, as best as I can today, what is it if I were to be born in a healthy, happy community with healthy, happy parents, relatively, they're people, with good neighbors, good relatives. What would they have in their lives? What would they be like? How would they school themselves, develop themselves? How would their life unfold? What would they choose their lifestyle to look like? Because that's what we're going for. And in answer to your question, if we want to get out of an addiction, we say no to something. And if we don't say yes to something better, more interesting, more exciting, and more excellent, then we're not going to be able to replace the hole that's left when we say no to something. So I wanted the real answer to that question. Okay, what are we looking for that's better? And let's see here. I've got some more comments. I'm sure I can find more friends who are non-smokers, but I still don't think it's right for me to reject my current friends just because they smoke. Yeah, absolutely. How can I get myself to accept that it's okay to move? Ooh, perfectly put. To move on to new groups of friends and exclude my current friends. So, the way I look at it, it's not about excluding your current friends. Because when we move forward in life, all of us, and this is the natural progression of life for everybody, and a metaphor comes to my mind. We want so much um, for everything to work well. And there are misguided souls who would go to Africa and stop the lions from killing the deer, right? Well, you and I know. And National Geographic shows us the whole story that lions need food and they kill deer to eat food. They're moving forward in their life. And the deer are going to be fine. They're going to, not saying this is about death and killing, but that as we move forward, as we find health and growth and food for the soul, food for the heart, food for the mind, we leave some things behind us. We don't exclude them. We're just spending more time with where we're going. And if we're where we're going, if we're a healthy person, we want more, better. We want to have more self-mastery, more excellence in our lives and in how we conduct ourselves. So that just means that if your friends who smoke cigarettes have a certain activity on a Friday night or a Saturday night, and you have something different you're going to do that doesn't involve smoking, then that's where you go Friday night, and you're with your smoking friends Saturday night until you fill your life or you move away. You know, you can never tell what life brings. Whatever movement and unfoldment in life that comes our way, it's not for me to live my life for my friends. I must love and have faith in them that they live their lives just the way is right for them. And I want to respect that and not be manipulative in that. And then I also hope that the people who love me and who are friends with me don't suck me dry, don't hang on to me, don't control me, don't wrap ropes around me and say, no, you can't leave me. No, you can't move forward. No, I won't let you. No, I want the same respect. That when I decide I'm going to go to college, or I decide I'm going to go towards a new profession, or I decide that I've fallen in love with someone and I want to get engaged to them and I spend a lot of time with them, or I decide I want to have a child, that's my life and my responsibility and my choice. So I decide what I'm going to do next. And it's not against anybody else. And sometimes when I decide I'm going to do something, it doesn't push anybody aside. It just takes me in the direction of spending more time doing what's right for me. Right now I have a soul sister, a friend who's been a friend for decades, and she always will be. And her path took her with her beloved to live in another state, which means I don't see her that often anymore, and I don't have a conversation with her that often as it used to be. And that's okay, because I know that we will always love each other and always have conversations with each other. It's just that right now, we don't happen to be able to go to lunch together or have coffee together. It's just where her life took her. And I love where her life took her. It's absolutely fabulous. So we don't need to push somebody away. We just go in the direction that is the next step for us to go. Let's see here. Wow, Heather, let's see. I love your analogy of naturally moving on, because it's just the natural order of things, like nature videos of lions and deer. Wow, what an insight. Thank you. Thank you that it's a wow for you. It's just logical, isn't it? Isn't it just healthy? Isn't that the natural order of how all of us want to be alive and growing, moving forward? So then, that's a part of it, of course, isn't it? Of moving forward into whatever it is next for you. And notice that our habits and our self-defeating behaviors have to do with an inadequate relationship with ourselves and our lifestyle. So when people quote unquote use or have a self-defeating behavior, um, it's usually some kind of a buffer or a way of filling space that's not already filled with something that is excellent or meaningful or challenging us. Sometimes, and this is kind of pure and simple and universal, but oftentimes, people will come to me in my private practice and talk about various things, and you know what my response to them is? You know what? I think you're bored. Yes, sometimes an addiction is comforting ourselves because we have so much shame that we're carrying that we haven't yet grieved and healed from when we were little. And we do know how to heal that nowadays. But sometimes we have a certain belief that keeps us from just going for it, or making the changes, which means letting go of something, right? Or venturing into something that you're a little bit scared of or a lot scared of. And so that keeps us kind of boxed in. And if we keep ourselves boxed in too long, we get bored. Couple of things I wanted to share with you. So if you have things that really matter to you, and I love this little thing that I found from the great tradition of values clarification. And they suggested that a value is not a value unless it has 7 factors. And so if you have something that you value at this degree and you haven't found a way to put it in your life yet, I would say that you're bored or frustrated or feel victimized or hopeless. And sometimes when you feel that kind of frustration and inability, or you don't have the place in your life to get that value or that need met, then you just kind of accept it and make do and kind of give up hope and get bored. So that something that's really important to you, and this is what you want in your life. Remember, it's about your relationship with yourself and your relationship with your life. So yourself is, you want to know what's really precious to you. That is a non-negotiable. That is a deal breaker if you don't have it. Freely chosen. It's yours. Nobody put it on you. And it's chosen from a consideration of alternatives. So it's like, yep, that. Because you don't want to just have one choice. Otherwise, you have an ignorance about different things. It's chosen with clear knowledge of the consequences. It's like, well, if I do this, then this is the price to pay. It's like, for example, somebody who loves, as I was speaking with somebody recently, someone who loves music, someone who loves being a musician, and chosen with clear knowledge of the consequences. So if this person wants to be a musician, the consequence is that you've got to do all the practicing, right? You've got to take the lessons. You've got to do all the woodshedding, and that takes time. It takes energy. You've got to stop and take a piece of your life and give it to that. Also, if you want to be fit, if you're overweight and out of condition, you got to have, and that's one of your values is physical fitness, then a clear knowledge of the alternatives. Well, we know what the alternatives are to not being fit, and the clear knowledge of the consequences. So if you want to be fit, that means that you've got to behave like a grown-up, right? You can't drink too much. You can't eat too much. You got to exercise. You got to get enough rest and behave like a grown-up, right? So if you want to be fit, that's knowledge of the consequences. It needs to be prized and cherished by you. Something that you prize and that you cherish. Something that is publicly proclaimed, which means you don't just um, keep your fitness, using that as an example, a secret. You say, I'm going to be fit, I'm going on a diet, and I'm working out. And so I work out at 6 o'clock every day in the morning or at night, and so that people know that, and that's what I'm doing, and that they work around it, right? Something that is acted on, which means you don't just talk about it, you actually do it. And something that's acted on repeatedly. And of course, you know, if I chose fitness, that's a classic example where if you want to be fit, we've got to move our bodies all of our lives to stay fully alive, fully connected, and energetic and excited to do all the other meaningful things in life. So those 7 things create a true value for us. So those are the sacred things. So those are the things that are sacred to you. And I'm thinking also another one is some people in their soul want to have children, men and women. And when that value has all those 7 things, and they find someone whom they love, and that someone says, I will not, I cannot, I shall not have children in any way, then it's a deal breaker. Just like I will not, and I cannot, and I shall not smoke, or use drugs, or lie to somebody, or do something illegal. No, I won't. Then, and if the other person doesn't respect that, then it's a deal breaker. So our values that are sacred to us. So this is how we want to replace our self-defeating behaviors with the things that we hold dear, the things that we cherish, and then to find a way to put it in our lives. And of course, I've got a wonderful long list of values and a way of you working through this. And if you want this study guide, send me an email. I'll just charge you $5 for it. And it's a workbook. It's a study guide of helping you clarify what your values are with the 7 steps, and then how to build positive beliefs on top of those values instead of negative beliefs. So let me share with you. Then we get traditional and inherited and just assumptions of beliefs built on top of our values that are not necessarily ours, that can be the seeds of us getting into these self-defeating habits or behaviors. So the first one on the list, so I have all these categories of traditional limiting beliefs. 18 of them around competence and worthiness, some around emotions and feelings, some around victimhood and lack, around change and action, around relationships, around your image, your sexuality, and your health, and around pleasure and pain. So it took me years to collect all of these. And I have a list of 79 of these traditional limiting beliefs. Now you want to make friends with them. You want to get to know them because you don't want them sabotaging you and being unconscious, right? You want to consciously get to know them and say, aha, I see. I see what you say. And guess what? You just came to me. You are not the belief that is really true to me and my values. And then you replace it, and I have a list of the healthy beliefs, the positive beliefs, the affirming beliefs that you want. I've got 91 of those to help you replace the old limiting ones that created these self-defeating behaviors. So if you have a request, chime in and I'll speak directly to that. Otherwise, you know what? The very first traditional limiting belief that's given to us, goodness knows all the different ways that it comes to us, is I must be inadequate if I don't get approval, and it's weak to ask for help. So I must be inadequate if I don't get approval. So what does that lead to? What kind of self-defeating behavior does that um, limiting belief get you? So I must be inadequate if I don't get approval. Okay, so we've got adequacy, which is a sense of self-esteem, versus a sense of inadequate, shame, guilt, low self-confidence, low self-esteem. So your self-esteem is built on getting approval. So we've got two humongous things right there. I didn't get, when I was a little bitty, the sense that I'm a good person and I'm a worthy person. It's very easy to teach little kids that. But if we make mistakes, and that's damaged in little kids, they're always worried and they're always trying to get approval. They're always trying to be right. They're always trying to be perfect. We need to learn when we're little kids that it's okay to make mistakes and that we're approved of even when we make mistakes. As a matter of fact, I'll say, ooh, you made a mistake. Well, let's figure out what's going on here. Let's figure out what we need to know. Well, let's find out what it is that you don't have. It's then the magical place of curiosity and learning, right? Most little kids who have, those of us who are adults who have this belief, we didn't get that. Our parents didn't know how to respond in that playful and constructive way. So now notice I just modeled giving approval when a mistake is made. An approval, it's actually a suggestion that we learn more rather than approving or disapproving. It's like, oh, this is reality. Curious, interesting. Let's figure out what to do as well. If I don't get approval, I must be inadequate. Probably didn't get enough approval, right? And so now as adults, our self-defeating behaviors, this is a complete recipe for a doormat. I'm going to do whatever it takes to get your approval. I'll even compromise my integrity to get your approval because I'm so needy to feel adequate in some way. So here, do you see from the first piece that I typed to you, wanting to make friends with ourselves and our lifestyle, which means I need to know how to give myself approval and learn all the components of self-esteem so that I build that in myself. And of course, you know, Nathaniel Branden and his 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem, his most recent book, he's the authority and he's fabulous. So if you decide you want to build your self-esteem, it's there, you can do it. And that means that you're looking for approval. So think about disapproval. Think about how to handle disapproval. What it is that you do instead of using some kind of self-defeating behavior by being a doormat or saying, yes, sir, or oh dear, or what is it that you do when you get disapproval? What is it that you structure in your perceptions and your self-talk and your decisions when someone disapproves? Because what I want is I want you to make friends with that. I don't want you to feel disturbed by it or rejecting of it or making it something negative, bad, or wrong. Let's go towards it in a very curious and intelligent way and figure it out. That's the way I'm thinking of making friends with it. Let's get to know it. Let's get to know it and find out what's going on there. Now, you know, it may be a person who has a habit of disapproving and judging. And in that sense, it's like, oh, that's just them. That's what they do. You know, when I do a talk and I've got really good response, and then there are a few people where and what I know is they will never give a perfect mark to anybody because they don't believe anybody's that perfect. So, well, that's how they see the world. And is it going to bother me? No, used to. So let's see, someone else said something. Good. If the belief is I must be inadequate if I don't get approval, does this also mean that if I get approval, I must be adequate? Well, maybe, maybe not, right? Doesn't this rely on other people's opinions? Yes. So that our worth is determined by others? Yes. Maybe not 100%. But remember what I typed at the very beginning of our discussion this evening? Habits and self-defeating behaviors. What is your relationship with yourself and with your world like? So if your relationship with yourself is pretty intelligent, pretty mature, pretty grounded, and other people's opinions are going on, you're understanding it's somebody else's opinion. And mostly, I don't need other people's opinions to be unconditional positive regard for me. I like that because it says I'm being well received and that what I'm doing is worthy to people and useful to people. But the only place where it's really a deal breaker is with Jack. I like it with my family, but everybody's human. We all make mistakes. But if there's something that is not right between me and Jack, I'm sensitive to that, and I'm going to go in there and I'm going to fix it. But I'm not going to say I'm unworthy. I'm not going to say that just because he disapproves of something or he's uncomfortable with something that it's about me. I've gotten more mature and more smarter than that, if you get what I mean. I know it's something that we need to talk about and discover, and maybe there's something that I did that I wasn't aware of, because I would never, of course, consciously do anything disrespectful for anyone, let alone my darling husband. So, yes, of course, it means that we're dependent on other people's opinions, and, of course, that is not mature. That's not how healthy and mature people function. So it is definitely a very serious, debilitating, limiting belief that creates self-defeating behaviors and bad habits. It can create liars, people who don't know how to tell the truth because they're so afraid of hurting somebody's feelings and getting the backwash from that. They're so afraid of somebody disapproving of them. They're so afraid of having a conflict about something that they will lie. They will say whatever they think that other person wants to hear, right? And that's a tragic self-defeating behavior, because then even the people you love, they don't know when to trust you. And that then cuts off your ability to have an intimate relationship because it's built, number one, on trust. This person also says, I don't like having my self-worth controlled by others. I hope not. Because your self-worth is determined by you. It's controlled by you. Now, others can have any kind of opinion, and of course there are people who don't like what you do or say or how you do it, whatever. And that's the point where you don't take it in terms of it being a value judgment on you. It's something you say, here's something I need to learn about. Unless this person is unhealthy and has an agenda, is manipulative, isn't honest, then you know that you're just going to distance yourself in a certain fashion, whatever is the appropriate and respectful and wise thing to do. Because there are some people that are not healthy yet, and they may never be. And they're not mature yet, and may never be. And we want to be respectful of them, and yet we can't afford to allow them into our lives closely. And if there's someone like that, for example, if you're working for a boss who is that abusive or critical or unhealthy, you want to find another job. And that may be a whole nother adventure forward on the path of life, leaving behind that boss and that job and going towards a new one, right? Oh, let's see. But Heather, you said yes to this. If I get approval, I must be adequate. Did I misunderstand something? No, you did not, because yes, I did say that. So, for example, I want people to like these broadcasts. I want to get your approval, and it just makes my day at the end of my broadcast when you say, thank you, that really made a difference. It lifts me, it gives me enthusiasm. But then I also get people who don't approve of me, and sometimes I celebrate that too. It's like, whoa, I pushed a button there. It's not for me to do that in my personal life, but if I get some big disapproval sometimes when I do a talk, that was a success too. So let me make the distinction. I love what I do, and I want to get approval because that means that it's in some way, what's meaningful to me in doing this is in some way making a difference for you and is meaningful for you. So if that's the case, I'll keep doing it. It's not that I emotionally and personally depend on that. Professionally, if what I'm doing isn't valuable to somebody, then I'm going to change what I do. Because what I want to do is be competent and helpful in what I do. It doesn't mean I'm any the less valuable. It means that what I'm doing needs to be more meaningful in a different way, which then I set about learning something new and creating something that is more valuable to people. Does that make sense? That kind of a distinction? We do want approval, but we don't base our value on that. We want approval for what we do, just like when you get a job review and you get a bonus. Yes, because I was effective. I was useful. I earned my paycheck and more than that. Yes, it makes me feel good. It makes me feel proud. But does my sense of valuing of myself depend on that? If I get a bad review, do I feel like I'm an unworthy person? No. It just means that I need to build a skill. And so then if we go back to when we're little kids, and I know you probably have heard this distinction, I hope you have, that when a child does something good or something that's a mistake or inadequate, we don't say, oh, you're such a good girl, or oh, you're such a bad girl. No, we say, wow, you did that well. I saw how patient you were. I saw how precise you were. That was great. Which means I'm not saying this is about you. I'm saying that this was about your precision and your patience, that you did that. Oh, you're a bad girl. No, I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say, oh boy, that one didn't work. Well, let's figure out what will work. Are you okay? This is not a reflection on you or your value. It's just you're learning something. So we make that distinction between the person and their behavior. The old-fashioned way, of course, they didn't know any better, was trying to control people with the carrot and the stick, the reward and the punishment. And the punishment oftentimes was shaming or domination, power and control, punishing, and that's abuse. Rather than saying, ooh, this is not working, let's figure out how to make it work. And of course, if you haven't done that when a child is small, trying to have that kind of a conversation with a teenager is a whole nother thing, because that means you're going to have to really show up with some interesting and mature and meaningful experiences to enter that dialogue. So let's see here. Oh, I see. So wanting approval is great, but we shouldn't base our sense of valuing ourselves on it, right? Wow, you're great. You articulate it beautifully. Exactly. Thank you so much for asking that question so that I could clarify. Thank you so much for chiming in tonight. So if I'm to sum this up, And next week we'll go on to how we sabotage ourselves, because that's a whole nother part of this that we need to know about and quote unquote make friends with. Making friends with means really getting to know it, getting to know you, right? So if we get to know something, then we know where it came from, we can give it some respect, and we can move it into um, a maturing or healing or more constructive direction. I really love that question about cigarettes and smoking. That was very complex. And I know I could say many more things about that. And if you chime in next week, I'm happy to look at that with you if it didn't all weave together for you. But I wanted to remind you of this that I taught earlier in a couple of my broadcasts. This is my one-page lifestyle building blocks. So a self-defeating behavior comes from an inadequate lifestyle. And thus, what's your relationship like with yourself? What's your relationship like with the world? How have you built your lifestyle to interact with the world? And how have you built your lifestyle to be respectful of and nurturing of and kind to yourself and what really matters to you, what's sacred to you, what's a deal breaker to you, so that you construct your life not around trying to numb yourself or comfort yourself or avoid something, but around what you really want. And so those are the false assumptions. Now let me read you a couple of the inspiring beliefs. I am worthy of love and respect. Pretty clear, very powerful. Instead of, I'm not worthy if I don't get approval, I am worthy of love and respect. I deserve to experience and have the work and the fun I need to feel fulfilled and grateful. I set reasonable standards for myself, which means I don't have to have approval all the time. The standards are my standards, and I'll get enough love because I give enough love, right? So, think about this week, what's missing for you in your life? And if you want to receive a copy of my lifestyle building blocks so that you can check in on yourself, just shoot me an email. It's Heather, and it's on my website, and my cell phone is on my website. So there's my email address. If you'd like any of the documents from tonight, and if you would like to get a download of my values study guide, it's just $5. Ship me your email and ask me for it, or put $5 in on the credit card payment of my website, and I'll send it to you. I'll send the link to you. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in tonight. As always, it's a delight for me to have a live discussion with you and to be able to share with you some things that I think are healthy and going to take you forward in your life to get more of what you want and to be more of who you can be. You have more greatness than you know. I believe that. Good night.